The Christmas lights strung across the windows of Antonio's restaurant cast colored shadows across the white tablecloth where Catherine Hayes sat alone, checking her phone for the 14th time in 20 minutes. The reservation had been for 7 p.m., and it was now 7:45. The table set for two with untouched water glasses in a small vase holding a single red rose that the restaurant provided for holiday diners. Catherine's designer dress felt too formal now, her makeup too carefully applied for someone who was clearly being stood up on Christmas Eve by a blind date she hadn't even wanted to go on in the first place. Her assistant Rebecca had set the whole thing up, insisting that Catherine needed to stop spending holidays alone in her office and that this man, some venture capitalist named Preston, was perfect for her. Successful, cultured, age-appropriate. But Preston had sent a text at 7:32 that read simply, "Sorry, can't make it, emergency came up." No explanation, no offer to reschedule, just a dismissal that confirmed what Catherine already knew. 42 years old, CEO of a tech company worth $3 billion, and still alone because ambition and vulnerability didn't coexist easily, and she'd chosen ambition so long ago she'd forgotten how to choose anything else. She should leave, pay for the wine she'd ordered to calm her nerves, and go home to her empty penthouse where she could spend Christmas Eve the same way she'd spent the last five, reviewing quarterly reports and pretending she didn't care that everyone else had somewhere to be. But something kept her in her seat, some stubborn refusal to let this humiliation be the final word on her evening. Then she heard the small voice, high and sweet, cutting through the gentle murmur of the restaurant's holiday ambiance. "Daddy, that lady is all alone. Can we ask if she wants to have dinner with us? Nobody should be alone on Christmas." Catherine looked up to see a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark curls and bright eyes, tugging on the hand of a man in his late 30s, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. The man looked embarrassed, trying to quietly redirect his daughter toward their own table. But the girl had already made eye contact with Catherine and was smiling with the kind of unselfconscious warmth that only children possessed. If that opening just wrapped around your heart and squeezed, if you can already feel where this is heading and you're here for every moment of it, then hit that like button right now. Share this with everyone who's ever felt alone during holidays when the world seems built for families and couples, who knows that connection can arrive from the most unexpected sources, who believes that sometimes the best gifts are the ones you never knew to ask for. Subscribe to Acts of Depth because we tell the stories about moments when loneliness meets grace, when strangers become family, when Christmas magic turns out to be real in the form of a little girl's kindness and a single father's gentle presence. Now let me take you back to understand exactly who these three people were and why what happened next would transform all of their lives in ways none of them could have predicted on a snowy Christmas Eve in Chicago. Catherine Hayes had built Hayes Technologies from a startup in her garage to a company that employed 8,000 people and revolutionized data security for financial institutions. She'd started at 25 with a computer science degree from MIT and an algorithm she'd developed that could detect fraud patterns faster and more accurately than anything else on the market. Banks had been skeptical at first, reluctant to trust their security to a young woman with no track record, but Catherine had been relentless. She'd pitched to 67 different institutions before one small credit union in Iowa had taken a chance on her technology. It had worked flawlessly. Word had spread. Within 5 years, she'd had contracts with major banks across the country. Within 10 years, she'd been fielding acquisition offers from tech giants offering billions. She'd turned them all down, choosing independence over the easy exit, building her company exactly the way she wanted it built. The cost of that success had been everything else. Catherine had dated sporadically in her 20s and early 30s, but relationships had always felt like distractions from the work that mattered. She'd watch friends get married and have children while she attended board meetings and negotiated contracts. She'd told herself she'd make time for personal life later, after the company was stable, after she'd proven herself, after she'd accomplished enough that she could relax her grip on control. But later kept getting pushed further away, and enough kept being redefined as more. Now at 42, Catherine had more money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes and nobody to spend it with. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 30, both gone before they'd seen her company go public. She had colleagues and employees and board members, but not friends exactly. People who respected her but didn't know her, who admired her success but wouldn't call her just to talk. The blind date had been Rebecca's intervention after finding Catherine alone in the office at 9 p.m. on the Friday before Christmas, reviewing code when everyone else had left hours ago to start their holiday celebrations. The man with the little girl was Marcus Sullivan, and the reason he looked uncomfortable about his daughter's suggestion was that he understood exactly what Catherine was experiencing because he'd been there himself more times than he wanted to count. Marcus had been a single father since his daughter Lily was 2 years old, when his wife Rachel had decided that motherhood and marriage to a high school teacher weren't the life she'd signed up for and had left to find herself somewhere on the West Coast, sending divorce papers and a signed custody agreement that gave Marcus full custody without a fight. For 4 years, Marcus had been both mother and father to Lily, navigating school pickups and bedtimes and the particular challenge of raising a daughter when you were a man who'd grown up with only brothers and had no template for braiding hair or understanding the social dynamics of 6-year-old girls. He taught American literature at Chicago's Lincoln Park High School, a job that paid enough to keep them in a small 2-bedroom apartment and fed but not enough for luxuries like eating at places like Antonio's, which is why tonight was special. Marcus had been saving for 3 months to take Lily somewhere nice for Christmas Eve, wanting to create a tradition that was just theirs, something magical enough that she wouldn't spend the rest of her life remembering that her mother had chosen not to be there. Lily had picked Antonio's because she'd walked past it on the way home from school and had been enchanted by the lights and the glimpse through the windows of white tablecloths and candles. Marcus had made the reservation 6 weeks in advance and had practiced not wincing when he'd looked at the menu prices online. But it was worth it to see Lily's face when they'd walked in, her eyes wide at the Christmas decorations and the soft music and the feeling of being somewhere grown up and special. Lily was the kind of child who noticed things other people missed. She'd inherited her father's sensitivity and none of her mother's self-absorption, which meant she went through the world paying attention to other people's feelings with an intensity that sometimes broke Marcus's heart. So when she'd spotted Catherine sitting alone at a table set for two, checking her phone with an expression Lily recognized as sad, even if she couldn't articulate exactly how she knew, she'd immediately wanted to fix it the way she tried to fix everything that seemed wrong in her small world. "Daddy, please. We can't let her sit there all alone. It's Christmas." Marcus looked at his daughter's pleading expression and then at the woman sitting several tables away. She was beautiful in that intimidating way that made Marcus feel immediately out of his league. Elegant dress, perfect posture, the kind of expensive simplicity that screamed wealth and success. She probably didn't want to be bothered by a scruffy teacher and his over-empathetic 6-year-old daughter. But Lily was already walking toward the table before Marcus could form a gentle redirection, her small hands still gripping his and pulling him along. Catherine watched them approach with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe. Or resignation. Lily stopped beside Catherine's table and spoke with the confidence of someone who hadn't learned yet that strangers might reject kindness. "Hi, my name is Lily, and this is my daddy Marcus. We saw you sitting all by yourself, and we thought maybe you'd like to have Christmas dinner with us because nobody should be alone on Christmas. And Daddy always says that sharing makes everything better." She smiled hopefully. "We'd really like it if you said yes." Catherine felt something crack in her chest, some wall she'd built brick by careful brick over years of choosing work over connection. This child with her earnest eyes and her father who looked equal parts mortified and resigned was offering her exactly what she'd been pretending she didn't need. Company. Warmth. The simple human kindness of not wanting someone to be alone. She could say no, could thank them politely and send them back to their own table and maintain her dignity and her isolation. Or she could say yes and let herself be rescued by a 6-year-old's compassion. Catherine surprised herself by smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. "I would love that. Thank you, Lily. That's very kind of you." Lily beamed and immediately claimed the chair across from Catherine, leaving Marcus to take the seat between them while signaling the waiter that they'd be combining tables. The waiter efficiently moved place settings and menus while Marcus offered Catherine an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry if we're intruding, Lily has a very big heart, and sometimes it overrules social boundaries. His voice was warm despite his embarrassment, carrying a hint of self-deprecation that suggested he was used to his daughter's enthusiastic empathy, creating situations he had to navigate. "You're not intruding," Catherine said, and meant it. "Your daughter is right. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. I'm Catherine." She extended her hand and Marcus shook it, his grip firm but not aggressive, his hands bearing the calluses of someone who did work beyond typing on keyboards. "Marcus Sullivan, I teach at Lincoln Park High, and you've already met my social coordinator, Lily." Lily giggled. "I'm not a social coordinator, Daddy. I'm 6. She turned to Catherine. "Are you waiting for someone? Is that why the table was set for 2? Catherine felt the embarrassment of the evening come rushing back, but Lily's open curiosity felt different than pity, more like genuine interest in understanding someone's story. "I was supposed to meet someone for a blind date, but he canceled. So yes, I was alone." She kept her voice light, but Lily's expression shifted to something close to outrage. "He canceled on Christmas Eve? That's really rude. You're supposed to keep promises on Christmas Eve especially. Daddy says that keeping your promises is one of the most important things you can do." Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him, but Catherine laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. "Your daddy is absolutely right. And yes, it was rude, but it's okay because now I get to have dinner with you instead, which I think is much better than dinner with someone who doesn't keep promises." Lily considered this and nodded with satisfaction. "That's true. We're much better company. Daddy makes funny voices when he reads stories, and I know all the words to Jingle Bells, even the fast part that most people mess up." The ice broken by Lily's chatter, the three of them settled into what became the most unexpected and meaningful Christmas Eve dinner any of them had experienced in years. Lily asked Catherine 100 questions with the fearless curiosity of childhood. What did she do for work? Did she have any pets? What was her favorite Christmas cookie? Had she ever been to Disneyland? Catherine found herself answering honestly, charmed by Lily's genuine interest and the way Marcus gently guided his daughter toward appropriate questions while allowing her natural warmth to shine through. Over appetizers that Lily pronounced fancy but good, Catherine learned about Marcus's teaching career and his love of literature. He spoke passionately about helping teenagers discover that books could be mirrors and windows, showing them themselves and introducing them to worlds beyond their experience. He'd been teaching for 12 years, had started right out of college with the kind of idealism that hadn't been entirely worn away by standardized testing and budget cuts. He talked about his students with the kind of affection that suggested teaching wasn't just a pursuit but a calling. And Catherine found herself envious of that certainty of purpose. She'd built a company, but Marcus was shaping lives. Over the main course, Marcus asked about Hayes Technologies with genuine interest that wasn't about networking or angling for something. He wanted to understand what she'd built and why it mattered. Catherine found herself explaining data security in terms she rarely used, making it accessible and personal rather than technical, telling stories about the small credit union in Iowa that had trusted her and the grandmother whose savings she'd helped protect from fraud. She'd forgotten that her work had started with wanting to help people, had somewhere along the way become more about market share and quarterly earnings. Talking to Marcus reminded her of the original purpose. Lily provided running commentary, declaring the pasta really long and the chocolate dessert the most delicious thing I've ever eaten probably in my whole life. She told Catherine about her school and her best friend Maya and the book she was reading about a girl who had magical powers but had to keep them secret. She asked if Catherine had any magical powers, and when Catherine said she didn't, Lily had suggested that maybe being really good with computers was kind of like magic because not everyone could do it. As dinner wound down and the restaurant began preparing for the late evening Christmas Eve service, Catherine realized she'd spent 2 hours not checking her phone once, not thinking about work or the blind date that had stood her up or the empty penthouse waiting for her. She'd been completely present in a way she hadn't been in years, drawn into conversation with a 6-year-old girl's infectious joy and her father's quiet kindness. When the check came, Marcus reached for it, but Catherine was faster, handing her credit card to the waiter before Marcus could protest. "Please, this is my Christmas gift to both of you. You rescued me from a very lonely evening. It's the least I can do. Marcus looked uncomfortable. You don't need to do that. We invited ourselves to your table. You invited me to yours, Catherine corrected, and I insist. Consider it payment for the best Christmas company I've had in years. Lily solved the tension by hugging Catherine suddenly and completely, her small arms wrapping around Catherine's waist. Thank you for having dinner with us. You're really nice and pretty, and I'm glad you weren't alone. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes as she hugged Lily back, this small person who'd decided she mattered enough to rescue. Thank you for asking me to join you, Lily. You have a very special gift for making people feel cared for. As they gathered coats and prepared to leave, Marcus hesitated. I know this is probably inappropriate and you can absolutely say no, but we're going to walk through Millennium Park to see the Christmas lights before heading home. If you don't have other plans, you'd be welcome to join us. Catherine thought about her empty penthouse and the quarterly reports and the choice between isolation and connection. I'd love that, if you're sure I'm not intruding on your tradition. Lily grabbed her hand. You're not intruding. You're adding to it. Traditions can have new people. That makes them more special. The three of them walked through Chicago's snowy streets toward Millennium Park, Lily between them holding both their hands and chattering about everything she saw. The park was transformed for Christmas, with thousands of lights creating tunnels of color and displays that made Lily gasp with delight. They walked slowly, letting Lily set the pace, stopping to admire decorations and take photos that Marcus captured on his phone. At one point, Lily insisted on a picture of all three of them, recruiting a passing stranger to take it. Catherine stood between Marcus and Lily, this accidental family unit, and smiled genuinely while the camera clicked. Later, when Marcus texted her the photo, Catherine would find herself staring at it, trying to remember the last time she'd looked that happy. Near the Cloudgate sculpture, Lily spotted a hot chocolate vendor and looked at her father with hopeful eyes. Marcus checked his wallet and nodded, and Catherine watched him count bills carefully before ordering 2 hot chocolates. When he tried to order a third for Catherine, she'd already paid for all 3 plus cookies, waving away his protest. It's Christmas. Let me be Santa. They sat on a bench near the skating rink, watching people glide across ice while sipping hot chocolate that was mostly marshmallows, according to Lily's delighted assessment. The little girl was getting tired, leaning against her father's side while watching the skaters with heavy-lidded eyes. Marcus wrapped an arm around her and looked at Catherine over her daughter's head. Thank you for this. I know we crashed your evening, but you've made Lily's Christmas magical. That means everything to me. You didn't crash anything. You saved it. Catherine's voice was quiet but certain. I was sitting in that restaurant feeling sorry for myself and convinced that success and loneliness were just the price of ambition. Lily reminded me that connection is a choice, not something that happens after you've accomplished it enough. I needed that reminder. Marcus studied her for a moment. Can I ask you something? It's probably too personal, but tonight has felt like the rules don't quite apply. Catherine nodded. The blind date. Did you actually want to go, or were you there because you thought you should want to? The question hit harder than Catherine expected because it was exactly right. My assistant set it up. She's worried about me spending too much time alone. I went because she was right that I needed to try, but I didn't really want to be there. I wanted to want to be there, which isn't the same thing. I understand that completely, Marcus said. After Rachel left, I tried dating for a while because everyone said I needed to move on, and Lily needed a mother figure. But I was going through motions to check boxes instead of actually being open to connection. Eventually, I stopped trying and focused on building a life that felt complete with just Lily and me. Some people think that's sad, but it's not. It's honest. He paused. Although I'll admit that meeting someone organically instead of through manufactured setups feels different, feels possible in a way I'd stopped expecting.
Is that what this is? Meeting organically? Marcus smiled. I think when my 6-year-old asks a stranger to join us for dinner, and that stranger says yes, and we end up walking through Christmas lights together, feeling less alone than we have in years, that's as organic as it gets. Lily chose that moment to fall completely asleep against her father's side, the hot chocolate forgotten in her mittened hand. Marcus carefully took the cup and looked at Catherine apologetically. I should get her home. She's going to be devastated she fell asleep before seeing all the lights. But it's been a big day. Catherine felt a surprising reluctance for the evening to end, but understood. Of course. Can I help you get her to wherever you're parked? We took the train. Live a few blocks from here, actually. But I'd love if you walked with us to the station, if you're headed that direction. They walked slowly through the park, with Marcus carrying Lily, who'd curled against his shoulder, still sleeping. Catherine carried Lily's hot chocolate cup and the bag of cookies they'd bought, feeling strangely domestic in a way that should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt natural. At the entrance to the train station, Marcus shifted Lily's weight and looked at Catherine with an expression that mixed hope with uncertainty. I know this is going to sound like the worst pickup line ever, but I had a really wonderful time tonight. Both of us did. And I'd like to see you again if you'd be interested. Not as a blind date or an obligation, just as two people who enjoyed each other's company and would like to enjoy it again. Catherine found herself smiling. I'd like that, very much. She pulled out her phone. Can I have your number? I'll text you so you have mine. They exchanged information with the awkwardness of teenagers, both aware they were creating possibility for something neither had been looking for. Marcus said goodnight and carried Lily down into the train station, leaving Catherine standing on the snowy street holding a cup of cold hot chocolate and feeling more alive than she had in years. She walked back to where her driver was waiting, having texted him to pick her up from the park, and climbed into the warm car. Instead of giving him her penthouse address, she gave him Marcus's neighborhood. Just drive around for a bit. I'm not ready to go home yet. The driver complied without question, used to his employer's odd requests. Catherine watched the snowy streets pass and thought about Lily's small hand in hers and Marcus's understanding of loneliness that came from experience rather than judgment, and the feeling of being seen as a person rather than a CEO or a success story. She'd spent 20 years building walls around herself, convinced that vulnerability was weakness and that proving herself meant standing alone. But sitting in that restaurant tonight, she'd been alone in a way that had nothing to do with strength and everything to do with fear. Fear that letting people in meant losing control. Fear that if she stopped working long enough to build relationships, she'd discover she didn't know how. Fear that success was all she had, and without it, she was nothing. Lily had looked at her and seen someone who needed company. Not because Catherine was weak or pathetic, but because humans weren't meant to be alone on Christmas. It was a simple observation from a 6-year-old that had cracked open something Catherine had been keeping locked tight. The possibility that maybe she could have both. The career and the connection. The success and the warmth of someone's hand in hers while walking through Christmas lights. Catherine texted Marcus when she got home that night. Thank you for a perfect Christmas Eve. Lily is a remarkable child, and you're clearly a wonderful father. I'd love to see you both again soon. Marcus responded 20 minutes later. Lily just woke up long enough to tell me that you're an angel who came to have dinner with us because Santa knew we'd be the best people to make you happy. Then she went back to sleep. I think my daughter might be onto something. Catherine fell asleep that night with her phone on the pillow beside her, checking periodically for messages the way she usually checked stock prices and earnings reports. Christmas morning arrived with snow falling outside her penthouse windows and a text from Marcus with a photo of Lily opening presents and a message. She wanted me to tell you Merry Christmas and that she hopes you're not alone today. Catherine wasn't alone. She spent Christmas morning on a video call with Marcus and Lily, watching the little girl show off her presents and tell elaborate stories about each one. In the afternoon, Catherine did something she'd never done before. She closed her laptop without opening a single work document and went for a walk through her neighborhood, noticing the families and the laughter and the ordinary magic of people being together.
Over the following weeks, Catherine and Marcus built something that started as friendship and slowly deepened into more. They had coffee while Lily was at school, meeting in the middle of their different schedules to talk about everything and nothing. Marcus introduced her to his students' essays and the particular joy of watching teenagers discover books that changed how they saw the world. Catherine explained the architecture of data security and found that Marcus asked questions that made her think about her work differently. They had dinner together with Lily, who became Catherine's most enthusiastic supporter, declaring that Catherine should definitely keep having dinner with them forever because she was really good at listening and she always lets me tell my stories all the way through without checking her phone like Daddy's friend Jennifer did that one time. Catherine started leaving work at reasonable hours to make time for coffee dates and family dinners. She discovered that her company didn't collapse when she wasn't in the office until 9 p.m. In fact, her team seemed more engaged and productive when she stopped micromanaging and started trusting the systems she'd built. She made time for Lily's school play and Marcus's faculty events. She showed up for the small moments that had seemed insignificant compared to quarterly earnings, but turned out to be where actual life happened. Marcus showed Catherine what partnership could look like when both people brought their whole selves instead of performing versions they thought the other wanted. He was genuinely impressed by her achievements but didn't define her by them. He appreciated her intelligence but also her sense of humor when she allowed herself to be funny. He saw her struggle with vulnerability and didn't push, but created space for her to practice being open at her own pace. And Lily loved Catherine with the uncomplicated wholeness that children offered when they decided you were safe. She showed Catherine her drawings and her favorite books in the dance she'd learned in class. She asked Catherine's opinion on important matters like which stuffed animal should sit where on her bed and whether purple or pink was a better color for the dress she wanted for the spring recital.